here. So it is once again Friday night, and you know what that means. Tonight we're going to start with part 2 of the Skinwalker Ranch series. This is going to be the final part, but there was so much information that I couldn't shove it all into the first one. Tonight we're going to go ahead and finish it up with the Bigelow Scientific Enterprise and the $22 million that the federal government spent to research the paranormal at Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, guys, they do things like that, and that is 100% documented. Before we get into that, I wanted to say thank you very much to a wonderful supporter of mine. On one of these videos, I did post a different way to be able to support the channel monetarily if you chose to. And I wanted to show you guys what I got. And I told you that I wanted to work on the set. This is going to be part of the new set, and I absolutely love it. I think that it adds something to it. It's not in its proper place, but it's fantastic. It's an old wooden lantern, and it's awesome. I enjoy it. So thank you very, very much, Kim. I really appreciate your support, and it goes right back into the channel to make things better. If you guys want to also help support the channel and the set and content and things like that, you know, it goes directly back to the channel. There will be a QR code that pops up on the screen, as well as a link down in the description box. And it's never, ever expected, but it's always appreciated. So I wanted to show you kind of a little haul of what I got. Anyway, let's jump into it. This is part 2 of Skinwalker Ranch. Okay, you guys, so during our last episode we got into all of the issues that the Sherman family and people prior to them had been experiencing on the ranch. This time we're going to talk about Mr. Robert Bigelow. He is the head of Bigelow Aerospace, as well as the Bigelow Tea guy, and he has his pokers in a lot of different fires. He is very interested in the paranormal. It's his favorite pastime, one of his favorite pastimes, and he definitely puts his money where his mouth is. In 1996, the Shermans actually sold the ranch to Mr. Bigelow for $200,000. They definitely sold it at a loss, you guys, because you have to keep in mind this was a 512-acre ranch. The Shermans, it was a beautiful property. The Shermans still had their cattle there. As you guys remember, they were breeding some very expensive Simmental cattle. And they had worked out with Mr. Bigelow that they would still be working the ranch with their livestock and what have you. And so that way they still had the land to be able to keep their farm. And in return, Mr. Bigelow was using the animals for biosensors. That's what they called them. They called the dogs and the cattle that, because when things would happen or things would be kind of ramping up to happen, one of the first signs that something weird was about to go on was the behavior of the animals. So that was very interesting, and it worked out for both of them. Mr. Bigelow actually put a scientific team together that stayed at the ranch in order, well, they mostly stayed at the ranch in order to document the weird goings on. They call them NIDS for short, but it is the National Institute for Discovery Sciences, and there were some very smart people on this team. George Knapp, the author of the book that we spoke about last time, and Dr. Colin Kelleher are two of those. Mr. Knapp is a very well-respected journalist in Las Vegas, an investigative journalist. We'll talk about George in a couple of episodes because he is very interesting and he's broken a lot of stories, y'all. So, in one interview, because Mr. Bigelow, he never really talked about the topic. He gave one interview, and it might actually be his only interview on the topic. And I couldn't actually find any video, but I did find the audio. So I'm going to go ahead and quote you part of this audio. Mr. Bigelow says, on the subject of Skinwalker Ranch, he says, "We were always outguessed, outmatched. It," referring to the phenomena, would put on a performance. We would all be able to observe it and prepare for the next time it would occur, and then it never would. It would never occur the same way at the same time ever again. It became obvious that we were not the ones in control. We were just along for the ride. The phenomena was playing with us, only giving us a little taste here and there. In terms of witnessing things, they did, both on camera and off. He says they were privileged to have been able to witness this at all, because whatever this is, the phenomena, if it didn't want them to be able to observe anything, there's no way that they would have been able to observe anything. And he says that it is as simple as that. George, in some of his lectures at conferences, he likes to say about Skinwalker Ranch and the investigation that science went up against the unknown and science got its butt kicked. Then he starts kind of to suggest that science isn't the only framework in which we should be able to research the paranormal. I don't know. He may be right. There's a lot of studies that are delving into consciousness and things like that these days, and they're coming out with some pretty interesting results. Let's go ahead and get into some stories, shall we? On the first day, the team discovered a number of mutilated cattle carcasses and other smaller farm animals. They also found 3 perfect circles where the hunting dogs allegedly were attacked. They said that in the circles the grass was dead and dry and they never could get anything to grow. They also got some weird radiation readings from that, but it wasn't anything that was really abnormal. It was just, a little bit above normal. When night fell that night, they witnessed large orbs that would fly around. One of them was tremendously bright, and it hovered over them for about 10 minutes. When they took photos of it and everything, they couldn't really use the photos as evidence because the orb kind of looked like a flashlight in the distance. There really wasn't anything remarkable, and it definitely wasn't as astounding as it had been when they witnessed it with their own eyes. The orb, they said, was as bright as the sun, and it hovered over them for about 10 minutes, and then it shot straight downward towards the ground and off to the left in the tree line. It was gone for about 10 minutes, and then it returned. It just gradually faded out after that. On March 10th, 1990, on March 10th, 1996, there was Mr. Sherman and his wife were out tagging their cattle. They had some new calves that had been born. And, that's where they put the little plastic tag in their ear. There was a mother and a calf they came across, and they tagged it just like they would, any other time. That it hadn't been a weird day at all. They hadn't noticed anything. Their dog was with them, one of the farm dogs, and they tagged the calf and they moved on. They were probably about 100 yards away when the dog began to bark like crazy, and they heard the cow, the mother, just mooing anxiously, and there was a lot of commotion over there. They were still within eyesight, and when they turned to look, they saw the mother walking back and forth just in a panic, and something was wrong with one of her legs. When they got closer, they saw that the mother's leg was broken, and what they saw on the ground in front of them absolutely floored them. I'll be inserting pictures like I normally do. This calf, in a matter of 45 minutes from start to finish, from the time they started tagging the calf and everything till they moved on and heard the commotion, about 45 minutes had passed, and this calf, as you see, was in terrible condition. It had been partially dismembered. Tons of flesh had been removed. There was no blood. It had been exsanguinated. There was no blood on the carcass, in parts of the carcass, or anywhere on the ground around the carcass. It hadn't seeped into the ground, nothing. They immediately called NIDS that came out and researched the discovery, and they were stunned. The carcass showed evidence of tool marks. It was something really sharp, like a scalpel, and then something that had also been very sharp but serrated. You could see the tool marks in the cuts that were made. Due to the lack of blood, the only conclusion that they could come to was that somebody had come and taken the animal, did what they did to it, dismembered it and everything else, and then brought the carcass back to that exact same spot and placed it there, because due to the lack of blood. Now, you have to remember that Terry and his wife were just 100 yards away. They were still within eyesight. If somebody had drove up, or if anything, as a matter of fact, had been noticed taking this calf away, they would have seen it. Not to mention the fact that the dog would have been barking. So that was totally inexplicable. They couldn't come up with anything about that. Another episode that they had that is really strange was when Terry and his wife were leaving the ranch. She remarked to Terry, as they were passing their bull pen, they had about 5 bulls in there that were their breeders. And she said, if anything happens to those animals, we're sunk. There's no way that we can keep our heads above water. They were treading as it was, and they went to town, and they were gone for about an hour. And when they came back, the bulls were no longer in the pen. They were gone. Terry and Gwen got out and began to look around and investigate the pen area. They saw nothing in the sandy dirt, no footprints, no hoof prints that were outside of the corral, nothing. I will be inserting pictures here. And, just for giggles, there was a trailer, a very small trailer that was inside of the corral that nobody had been in for years. As a matter of fact, there was a piece of wire that had been welded onto the doorknobs to keep the doors shut and secure. And Terry decided that he was going to look through the windows just to see. As Gwen was looking somewhere else, Terry looked into the windows, and all of those bulls were in that tiny trailer. It was like they were in a trance. They were all standing oddly still. It was just eerie. And their eyes were staring straight ahead. They did not move. It was like, mannequins. And they opened the door. When they finally got the door open and cut the wire, the bulls just became animated again. They came back to life. The trance was broken, and they went batshit crazy trying to get out of this trailer. They did get the bulls out of the trailer, but it was very hard to do because they barely fit through the door. There was no way that somebody could have put these animals in that trailer with them not pitching a fit and tearing the trailer to pieces. And especially to get them to stand there like that in an hour's time. It was just kind of crazy. NIDS did come out and investigate the area, and they couldn't really figure anything out either. The only thing that they could do was document the evidence that they found, and that was that the bars of the corral had been magnetized. It was just crazy, the amount of magnetization that had occurred, and within 48 hours it slowly began to dissipate, and then it was just gone altogether. So it lasted for about 2 days, and they still couldn't figure it out. And we're talking about some really smart men in different disciplines. You had your biological science guys, you had your physicists, you had your geologists, your chemists. They covered so many areas of this thing, and they couldn't figure it out. So that's kind of odd. Another thing that was really crazy was, let's see, there were two, they were hanging out one night, and they heard something outside. The dogs started going nuts, like they do, the biosensors, and Terry was staying over at the ranch. There were two scientists that were on duty that night, and they went outside to inspect and see what was going on. Of course, Terry grabs his rifle because he's used to weird things happening, right? And he takes it with him. They hop in the side-by-side, and all three of them take off to go investigate. When they find the dogs are standing beneath a tree. When they look up in this tree with their spotlights, they didn't see anything until they shined their spotlight in the right area, and they saw a creature perched up in the tree that they estimated to be between 350 and 400 pounds. Its eyes were bright yellow with eye shine. Its skin was kind of leathery from what I've read, and other than that, they really couldn't get a good look at it. Mr. Sherman was immediately sick of this, and so the first thing he does before they can stop him is he fires at the animal. Everybody saw him hit it. It falls from the tree. When they walked around to investigate it, nothing was there. Nothing. There was no blood. They searched the surrounding area to see if they could track where it ran off. If it did and they missed it, they couldn't find anything, y'all. What they did manage to find were two footprints that were, the pad of them were about 6 inches in diameter, and they had 3 talons on them that looked, the way that they described it, like a huge bird of prey, like their footprints. And, you know, a bald eagle just 400 pounds. And the weird thing was they found one, and then they found the next one like 20 feet away from that one. But that was the only thing that they found. Terry says that he saw another one, or the same one, that was a little way off to his right, and one of the scientists also corroborates that. Terry fired again. They both said that it was hit, but again, they went and looked, and they found nothing. After searching for about 2 hours, they found nothing. Let's see. Oh my gosh. In April, 2 scientists were out for a walk one night, and they saw these blue orbs, these beautiful blue orbs, not the blue meanies. These were different. There was no liquid inside of them. One scientist looked through his night vision binoculars, and you have to remember, this is back in 1996. He looked through his night vision binoculars, and he saw this huge rectangular craft. Look, it was just solid black, and it blocked out the night sky and everything, and he saw it. It was slowly traveling down their right side, right next to the tree line. And he was discussing that with his colleague, who saw nothing. He saw the orbs, but he didn't see this craft that the Canadian scientist, he was from Canada, but he's unnamed, the Canadian scientist was seeing through these night vision binoculars. When he would take them down, he saw nothing. When they looked back through them, he saw the object again. And he says that it spoke to him. Whoever was operating this craft spoke to him and told him that they were God, and that everything would be okay. They were watching, is the message that they telepathically imparted to the Canadian scientist. It abruptly vanished, and they didn't see that particular thing again. Yet again, something that was witnessed, something that was documented by 2 scientific researchers that value their reputations, and they were willing to state that the story actually happened. Another thing, and this one right here is probably the eeriest thing for me, aside from like the poltergeist and the shadow people the Shermans experienced. Around 2:30, and this happened in the month of August, so it was a summer night. Around 2:30 in the morning, there were two researchers, Jim and Mike, and they were up on the ridge, and they were just keeping watch that night, you know. And all of a sudden, they see a huge orb form. This orb got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it was almost like a tunnel of light behind it was illuminated. They saw this big shadowy thing through the binoculars. You have Jim looking. Mike might have had a pair, but I don't remember. Anyway, they're looking and they see this thing, this huge shadow thing, crawling army style through this tunnel thing. And the orb opens up, and this huge 6 to 7 foot tall shadowy creature with, they couldn't distinguish a face because it was just black. It stood up to its full height once it exited the portal, we'll call it. It looked around, and then it took off up the ridge, you know, kind of where these researchers were, at an unbelievable speed. It was so fast. Now, what they did realize is during this time, with the night vision binoculars, they could see the entire scene unfolding before them, but to the naked eye, there was nothing but the little orb. You couldn't see anything else. So that's really odd. You know, there must be something about these particular wavelengths of light that we can't naturally see, but with the help of technology, we realize that there are things there that normally we would have no idea about. So that's really odd to me. But that one kind of got to me, that particular story. They did say that they smelled when they went down, because they're scientists, that's what they do. When they went down to research the area that they saw this thing exit, that they smelled sulfur, and they had a thing that they called a NARD machine. N-A-R-D, I would assume. I didn't see the spelling, but I heard them. And the NARD detector thing alerted them to alpha, delta, and gamma radiation in that particular area. It quickly dissipated, and, you know, that was the only evidence they were able to document, were those really weird readings. A third incident happened, and they had cameras up on poles mounted all over the place, you know, since Ned's got there, since Bigelow bought the place. And they were always fine. Nothing bad ever happened. One night, they were observing the footage, and everything was cool, copacetic. They went out the next morning, and these cameras were torn to pieces. The wiring was pulled out of them. Some pieces were missing and broken. And the good news about that, and they were so excited because they had some other cameras that were filming those 3 cameras there. They were filming the area, so they knew when they rolled back the footage, they would be able to see what happened to the 3 broken cameras. They rolled the footage back, and sure enough, 1 second, the cameras were absolutely fine the way that they had been. And in the next second, the cameras were in their broken state. You didn't see the event happen. You didn't see anything come and tear up the cameras, but you did see the aftermath of the wiring and the broken cameras, but you never saw anything do it. You didn't even see it happening. I guess it was just like an edit, you know, like a jump cut. And that was really odd. After that, nothing, the events slowed down. The only other weird thing that I can talk to you about is something that they call the hitchhiker effect. And this seems to be paranormal things that people who spend a lot of time at the ranch, or some that have only visited once, they seem to take something home with them. And when they get to the house, I'm sorry, you guys, when they get to the house, they have weird experiences that start happening in their homes, whether it be shadow people, poltergeist activity. Some really freaky, scary things have happened to a lot of them, and it scared them so bad they won't even talk about it. This is how our government got involved. In, I want to say, 1998, but I'm not sure. I couldn't find the exact date, you guys. But we're going to go ahead and say in 1998. Regardless, it was a couple of years after Bigelow had gotten the ranch. There was a man named Jim Lakatsky. He worked for our favorite relative, who would be Uncle Sam, in a little project that was known at the time as OSAP. Now that stands for Advanced Aerospace Weapon System Application Program, OSAP. And Dr. Lakatsky came across George's book. He visited Skinwalker Ranch, and he had these experiences I was telling you about for himself. He was extremely interested in the phenomenon, and so he goes and he talks to one of his very good friends, Mr. Harry Reid. Senator Reid shared the same interest as you and I do, and he devised a plan to study the paranormal effects that were happening on this ranch using the government's money. Now, in their defense, the government thought that it was just a UFO project, which, you know, arguably they've been in the UFO business for years and years now, and we'll get into some of those. Oh, they're so interesting. Some of those episodes later on. But he did get approval for federal funding, and in the grand scheme of things, the total budget for the project was around $22 million. It lasted for 2 years total, and there were about 50 employees. OSAP became ATIP. It was the mother program to this ATIP. And if you guys have heard anything about the Tic Tac UFO, or the Navy's stricter reporting guidelines for things that they're seeing in our skies, this would be why. It was because of the things that they found out when they began this program. It was called ATIP, and that stands for Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. A lot of UFO people are really ticked off by that because of the word threat. My opinion on that is that anything that is abnormal in our skies that we don't have any control over, you know, it's not our technology, I think that we need to be aware of what it is. Now, I'm not saying we need to shoot it down or anything, but what I am saying is that we should definitely investigate to find out what's going on. And this program was headed up by Louis Elizondo. The story, and I bet you guys heard about this one because the story was blown wide open when the New York Post decided that they were going to publish an article about it in 2019. And that started the era of what I call a mini disclosure. We got to learn a lot of different things that we didn't know what was we didn't know were going on. And now the government has the UFO program that they are openly interested in studying. They've had a couple of congressional hearings on it. And they actually wrote a report about it about a year or two ago. Now, in this report, I didn't expect much, and we didn't get much. They simply said that they hadn't had the time or the resources to really research it in the amount of time that Congress wanted this report done. So, of course, they have the budget and stuff to do so, especially in the wake of the and I'll post some footage here if I can find it, the Tic Tac UFO incident that happened on, I want to say, the USS, oh gosh, I don't know if it was the Roosevelt or, don't get me lying, I'm not sure. But Commander Dave Fravor, he was a pilot for the U.S. Navy, and they were out doing war games this particular day. Now, what Commander Fravor didn't know was that the, oh goodness, what do you call them? The radar guys on board had, it was the USS Nimitz. I'm sorry. Yes, the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier. The radar tech people on there had been seeing these odd things for weeks that were coming from the sky at tremendous speeds. They would disappear in the ocean. They would pop back up, and they had no idea what they were because they're looking at it via the radar screen. So one guy spoke to his superior, and he's like, look, I think that we need to find out what's going on, and now is the perfect opportunity. Commander Fravor and his team were sent to investigate one that had been stationary for hours. They actually located it, and they came in above this thing. It descended from the sky in a second. Commander Fravor saw it, and he started to circle it. As he started to circle it, what he describes as a large white Tic Tac. There were no distinguishing marks, nothing else. It was a Tic Tac. As he begins to circle it, it begins to do the exact same maneuvers that he's doing. It was also jamming radar, which is an act of war. So it was intelligently controlled. Commander Fravor also noticed that in the water beneath them, there was a huge disturbance about the size of a 747. And this Tic Tac that was behaving like a or it went down at this time, straight down to hover over the disturbance in the water. And it began pinging back and forth like a ping pong ball in a little box. They watched it, they observed it for a little while, and then it just zipped off. They radioed back to the Nimitz and told them that they had lost sight of it. When the radar technician informed them that that was quite all right, that it was waiting for them at their cap point. The cap point was unknown to even them. It was only known to a select few, and somehow or another, this Tic Tac looking object knew where they were going. It anticipated it, and it showed up there first. Kind of, Commander Fravor says, to let them know, haha, I know this, I see you, and there's nothing that you can do about it. They landed, they filed the report and everything the way that they were supposed to, and there was no explanation for it. The government can't explain it. So we have some really odd things going on in our skies, you guys, and on this ranch. You know, it's the same kind of phenomenon, and Skinwalker Ranch was the precursor to it all. It's what opened up these avenues of investigation, and without it, we wouldn't know what we know today. So anywho, that's it. That is the second part of our story. It's ongoing, so when something interesting happens again, I will keep you guys updated. But Skinwalker Ranch, I'd love to be able to visit it one day. I didn't talk to you about, I believe his name is, oh goodness, please don't get me to lying, Brandon. He is the new owner because Skinwalker sold again. And he is a real estate tycoon, and he's the one, we went over that in part 1. He's the one that allowed it to be opened up to the History Channel to be able to make the show and show their investigations and everything. And I won't spoil a whole lot of that for you, but what I will tell you is they have found some very interesting anomalies. I'll see if I can find a photo, and what they call it is a portal. Don't know what it is, but I know it's really odd. So yeah, that's it, y'all. I think I'm gonna do a ghostly episode next week. We might do another haunting because I read a good one. It's definitely scary. I haven't been able to get it out of my mind, and I've actually had a little bit of trouble sleeping, you guys, so it's a good one. But anyway, I really appreciate you guys joining me. Please like the video if you liked it. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm always in the market for new friends, and I would love to talk to you. And I would love to discuss, you know, things that, what are your thoughts on Skinwalker Ranch? Have you ever been to a place? Have you ever been to Skinwalker Ranch? Do you live near the Uinta Basin? Because I would be interested in that. But yeah, let's just get the conversation going, and I will talk to you guys later. I'll see you next week. Until then, take care, send out good vibes, say your prayers, and always try to stay in the light. Bye, y'all.